My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger, he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount. I said no, and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born, and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now, and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit, and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to, when they started getting a bit more serious. My uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that. This all went down about an hour ago, and my wife is still crying in our bathroom with the door locked. Backstory: we had our son, now 11 months old, while my wife is in residency. She took a few weeks off before giving birth, and then went back to work a few months after, while I transitioned my hours to part-time so that I could stay at home and raise our son. My mom moved in with us shortly after the birth in order to help out, which allows me to get in a few hours of work per day and also not get swamped with taking care of the baby / housework. She's quite old-fashioned and would definitely not prefer this arrangement with me being a stay-at-home dad. But she hasn't said anything to either of us and has been a great help. For anyone unfamiliar with medical residency, it is brutal. My wife has just over a year left. Sometimes she comes and goes for 1 to 3 days, and our son is asleep the whole time she's home, which has been happening more as his sleep schedule shifted to sleeping through the night. My mom and I make sure that when she's home and the baby is awake, my wife gets him 100%. I know it's been hard on her, but unfortunately it's just going to be this way for another year. The first big milestone she missed was him rolling over. When she got home, my mom pulled her over to the baby all excited. I thought she was going to tell her, but instead she says, "Julie, you came home right on time. He's been moving about as if he's going to roll over." They both stood there encouraging him, and right on cue he rolls. My wife was elated. She was so worried and guilty about not being there, and she took it as proof that she can still be a present mother while working. So we continued. I send texts over little things she misses through the day so that it's not completely unbelievable. But my wife has been present for every single big milestone. He coincidentally started crawling with her right there. His first words were in front of her, and he began standing, cruising, and walking when she happened to be home. The walking one was difficult. There was a tough 7-day stretch where she just wasn't home during the daytime when he was awake. And his walking went from teetering to walking a couple steps pretty confidently in that time. We put little beanbags in one of his pants pockets so he'd be wobbly and unbalanced, and it looked believable, since he fell after the first step like he was doing a week ago. Yes, it was mean to our poor son, but my wife's face was worth it. Today it all unraveled. So far he can just say mama, dada, and nana. Yesterday he started saying, bye, bye. My wife has today off and has been home all morning. My mom and I have been trying to get him to say, bye, all day without giving it away that we already know he can say, bye. Successfully got him to say, bye, to the ducks at the park, and we both gushed over his newest word the whole way home. My wife was using my phone to take pictures of him and began showing my mom at home while telling her about his newest word acquisition. She was swiping through my gallery and saw a video from yesterday and goes, "Oh, you never sent me this one." It was literally like a slow motion film happening in front of my eyes. I had taken the video of him yesterday waving, bye, bye. My wife isn't stupid, she figured the whole ruse out pretty much instantly. I've never seen her look so upset and heartbroken before. I couldn't say or do anything to comfort her. Now she's locked herself in the bathroom crying and won't come out. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business, and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the three of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette. Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every "I love you" I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. I met my friend Chuck about 1.5 years ago. We were both part of an online local group for single parents, and eventually met offline with other group parents. I have known Britt since high school. Chuck's wife died of childbirth complications the day their daughter was born, more than 2 years ago. Britt is a few months out of a 9-year relationship. Both of them have expressed wanting to meet other people. And I thought they'd be good for each other because of common interests, and we all have kids of similar ages. 2 days before Christmas, Chuck and Britt went out on their first date. I kept Chuck's daughter at my house so the two could have some more time together without him having to worry about the baby. The plan was for her to spend the night. She's done it before and gets along great with my 3-year-old girl. But Chuck knocked on my door at 11 p.m. to get his daughter. He barely said a word to me and I could tell he had been crying, but he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. The next day, I asked Britt what happened. She said that they had dinner and a couple drinks, things were going excellent. She said she felt like they had great chemistry and were even getting physical at his house. But he suddenly told her to stop and to leave immediately. She swears that she has no idea what she did wrong and is really hurt by the whole thing. I believe her because she is really sweet and social. I've never seen her do anything to piss anyone off. I tried to talk to Chuck at the same time to get his side of the story and see what went wrong. All he said that he wasn't feeling it and didn't want to discuss it further. I didn't push it, but when I went to wish him a Merry Christmas a day later, I saw he had deleted me from his social media. I texted it to him instead and asked, "You okay?" But no response. I am seriously hurt and don't know what to do. Chuck has become one of my closest friends, and our daughters are the best of friends too. I am really worried that this has something to do with his wife. And I want to apologize if he felt like I was pressuring him to date after her death. At the same time, I don't want to overstep boundaries and bother him when he's having a hard time. It's been over a week and I'm worried / upset.